Stop for a second and think about the last time you actually made a decision without second-guessing yourself. Not a small one, like what to eat for breakfast, but a real decision, one that mattered. If you had to think back more than a day or two, that is not a coincidence. That is a pattern, and it has a name. Overthinking is not a personality trait or a sign of intelligence, and it is definitely not something you were just born with. It is a software problem, and like any software problem, it can be patched. Here is what nobody tells you about overthinking. It does not feel like a problem while it is happening. It feels productive. Your brain is running through scenarios, weighing outcomes, considering every angle, and that internal activity mimics the sensation of making progress. But you are not making progress. You are spinning in place while the clock runs. Researchers who study decision fatigue have consistently found that the longer a decision takes, the less confident people feel about it, even when the extra time produces no new information. You think more equals better, but your brain's processing system does not work that way. The reason overthinking is so persistent is that it is tied to threat detection, one of the oldest functions in your nervous system. When your brain perceives uncertainty as a potential threat, it activates a loop: scan for danger, generate options, evaluate options, scan again. In situations where actual physical threats existed, that loop kept people alive. In a modern context where the threat is an email you have not sent, or a career choice that may or may not pan out, that same loop just runs indefinitely because there is no clear signal to shut it down. The system was never designed for ambiguity at this scale. Understanding that is the first step, but understanding alone does not fix anything. What you actually need is a structured way to interrupt that loop and replace it with a decision process your brain can actually complete. That is the system patch, and it works in 3 parts. The first part is what psychologists call decision bracketing. Most people approach a decision as a single continuous process, meaning they think about it until they feel ready, which for overthinkers means they think about it indefinitely. Bracketing means you set a hard time container around the decision before you start, not after you have already been spiraling for 3 hours. Before you begin, you say to yourself, I am giving this decision 30 minutes, or this decision gets made by Thursday at noon. The bracket creates a boundary, and boundaries are what your brain's threat detection system actually needs. Without a boundary, uncertainty feels infinite. With one, it becomes manageable. This is not about rushing decisions carelessly. Research on deadline psychology shows that constraints actually improve decision quality in most cases because they force prioritization. You stop trying to evaluate everything and start focusing on what actually matters. The bracket does not limit your thinking, it focuses it. The second part of the patch is separating information gathering from evaluation. One of the core reasons overthinking compounds is that people mix these 2 phases together. You are looking something up, and while you are looking it up, you are already judging it, comparing it, worrying about it. Then you look up more information to resolve the worry, which generates new comparisons, which generate new worries. The loop feeds itself. When you deliberately separate the 2 phases, you break that cycle. Spend a defined period collecting only information, not judging, not deciding, just gathering. Then close the information gathering window and shift entirely into evaluation mode. Your working memory functions more efficiently when it is not trying to do both at once. Cognitive load research backs this consistently. Parallel processing of input and judgment degrades the quality of both. The third part is the one most people skip because it sounds too simple, and that is a written record of your reasoning. When overthinking is purely internal, your thoughts cycle because there is no exit point. A thought goes in, loops around, and comes back without resolution. Writing forces a thought to completion. When you write down why you made a choice, your brain registers that the process is finished. There is an end point. The loop has somewhere to land. This is not journaling in the therapeutic sense. though that has its own value. This is purely functional. A sentence or two about why you leaned one direction. It does not need to be elaborate. The act of writing is the mechanism, not the content. Now here is where it gets more interesting, because these three parts are most effective when you understand what kind of decision you are actually dealing with. Not all decisions carry the same cognitive weight, and treating them as though they do is one of the hidden drivers of overthinking. There is a useful framework developed originally in the context of organizational decision-making that categorizes decisions by their reversibility. Some choices are what you might call two-way doors, meaning you can walk through them, look around, and walk back if needed. Others are one-way doors, meaning once you go through, reversal is costly or impossible. The problem is that overthinkers tend to treat two-way door decisions with the same intensity as one-way door decisions. Your brain is burning the same amount of energy deciding which productivity app to use as it would on a decision that actually has lasting consequences. Before you apply the bracket or the separation method, just ask one question. Is this reversible? If yes, your decision process should be fast and light. You are not protecting yourself from permanent consequences, so you do not need a defense system built for permanent consequences. If no, then more deliberate thinking is warranted, but even then, the three-part structure applies, just with a longer bracket and a more thorough information phase. What you are building here is not a trick to make decisions without caring about them. You are building a repeatable internal process that your brain can rely on. The reason overthinking thrives is that most people have no reliable system, so every decision triggers the threat detection loop from scratch. A consistent process becomes familiar to your nervous system over time, and familiar patterns do not activate threat responses the same way unfamiliar ones do. You are essentially training your brain to recognize decision-making as a known, manageable process, rather than an open-ended uncertainty event. There is something else worth naming, because it sits underneath a lot of persistent overthinking, and that is the belief that the right answer exists and that thinking harder will reveal it. For some decisions, particularly factual or technical ones, that belief is accurate. But for most of the decisions people actually agonize over, there is no single correct answer waiting to be discovered. There are trade-offs, and the goal is to choose the trade-off you can live with and move forward. The moment you shift from searching for the right answer to choosing a workable path, the cognitive load changes significantly. You are no longer trying to solve an unsolvable equation. You are making a call based on what you know and what you value, which is exactly what decision-making is. The people who seem decisiveness as a natural quality are not wired differently in some fundamental way. What they typically have is a higher tolerance for the discomfort that comes after a decision, that brief window where doubt shows up and asks whether you made the right call. That discomfort is normal. It is not a signal that you chose wrong. But for overthinkers, that discomfort gets interpreted as evidence that more thinking was needed, which means the loop starts again before the decision has even had a chance to play out. Building tolerance for post-decision discomfort is part of what you are doing every time you use this system. You commit to the bracket, you separate information from evaluation, you write down your reasoning, and then you watch what actually happens. Over time, your brain builds a reference library of outcomes. Most of the time, the catastrophic scenarios you were modeling do not arrive. And the more often your brain sees that, the less aggressively it activates the threat loop the next time a decision comes around. This is the patch. It is not complicated, and it is not a personality transformation. It is a structural fix to a process problem, and like most structural fixes, it works best when you use it consistently before you need it, not after you are already 3 hours deep into a spiral about something that probably has a perfectly workable answer you could have landed on in 20 minutes. If this helped you see the loop, watch the next video on analysis paralysis. That's where you fix the decision system underneath it. Subscribe. It's not self-help. It's a system upgrade.